On this week of Sid, can we get rid of this for the start? Here we are, 10 episodes deep of Saday's TV, and that can only mean one thing. It's our season finale. We're sending it off this week with, obviously, Nvidia's new RTX announcement, because that's huge. As you guys saw a minute ago, we're also going to talk about one of Mike's killer builds again, which I'm really looking forward to. There just wasn't room for it on the table right now. It'll be back. It'll be back. And as always, we're going to talk shop about some sweet Saday's savings. All this and more on this week's episode of Saday's TV. Let's get it. So I'm back with Mike looking at another one of his killer builds, and this one, to my understanding, you completed not even a week after we last had you on STV. Mm-hmm. You're a busy man. Jeez. Why don't you tell us what you got in store for us today with this one?
Yeah, all right. So we all know that Intel had launched the 10900K, and my last build was the 9900K. So, in true form, I had to have, the top end Intel chip. That's how I roll. I really wanted to see what the 9900 versus the 10900, what kind of gains I would get. So realistically, the only thing that's left over from my last build would actually be my 2080 Ti. I kept it just because, it's beautiful. So you got a 10900K there. You've got 32 gigs of RAM at 4,000 megahertz. You've got, there's a 256 gig Samsung Evo Plus, I think it is. NVMe SSD. There's another 2 terabyte Western Digital Black NVMe SSD in there. There's an 860 Evo 2 terabyte standard SATA SSD in there, and then there's a 10 terabyte WD Red in there. I ran it all on a Corsair RM750, which in hindsight I probably should have gone one size bigger, just because other things we're going to be talking about shortly.
Fair.
But a lot of people had said they wanted to see the RGB, so yeah, I delivered, I think. You've got everything lights up in that case, and being colorblind, blue and pinks and purples, they stick out for me, so I definitely went the neon retro look and went with blues and pinks and purples, and I think I pulled it off. It looks good.
I think it looks amazing, and I know that our cameraman Mikey and I shouldn't say just cameraman. This guy does so much more behind the scenes. I can't even explain it. But currently he's on the camera. I know that he loves the blue or teal and pink looks. So I'm sure that when you lit this thing up for him, he also lit up himself.
Yeah. It was nice to see him smile.
It doesn't happen so often.
No, it doesn't.
Well, man, thank you very much for showing us another amazing build. I love having you in here. It's really, really exciting when I'm told that you're going to be stopping by with another build. So, hopefully this is a pattern that continues in the future and we get to see a lot more from you.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate you guys having me, and doing builds and having you guys, take interest is, it means a lot. It means I'm being recognized for the hard work I'm putting in, so I appreciate that.
It's hard not to recognize, man. It's hard not to recognize. If you guys have any question for Mike about his build or any future builds that he's going to be doing, you can check out his socials right here, and they're all going to be linked down in the description below as well. So, unless you've been living under a rock, Tuesday was Nvidia's Gen 2 RTX announcement, including the announcement of a 3070, 3080, and 3090 card, respectively. So we're not going to deep dive into the specs or anything like that, but what I do want to talk about is the raw performance of these cards and what that means for not only gamers, but the average consumer as well. Think about this. We've literally got a set of cards priced lower than the touring cards with potentially more power. Imagine a 3080 with 60 to 85% more power than a 2080 Ti. It's insane. So if you just got a 2080 Ti and you're shaking in your boots right now, don't worry. That's still an insanely solid card, and it's going to carry you. It's going to last. You don't have to worry about anything like that. Let's not forget that just up until this announcement, the 2080 Ti was without a doubt the best-in-class GPU for the recent series, so don't sweat it. Anything that was in development this year is still going to run more than fine on high settings and max resolutions. It's just now we have more to look forward to when it comes to turning up the heat on high FPS and high resolution as well. When it comes down to it though, there are a few more things to dissect with these cards, including, well, DLSS 2.0. But we'll dig into that in a little bit. Alright, so for this part of the episode, I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleagues here and let them do a little bit of open table discussion. We got Mike, our builder, obviously, and we're also going to bring in a familiar face to those of you who have been around since Season 1 of Saday's TV, Mikey, who is not only the everything behind the scenes of Saday's TV, but also the marketing manager for Saday's North America. So let's get him in here and have you two do battle.
All right, so I'm back, I guess, for an episode. This is pretty wild. Mike, I mean, we kind of touched base about this slightly, but let's really get into it together today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, a lot of talk around the hype with Gen 2 RTX, what it has to offer, the wild claims, and I mean, I'm going to throw it out here real quick that I want Nvidia to succeed. I want to be able to buy a 3090 confidently and be stoked about it. But of course, I do have some reservations, and it's really quite simple. The demo that we were given on Tuesday seemed to be really, really focused on DLSS, which again, I have no problem with. But when you start comparing the current 2080 Ti with something like a 3070 and then a 3080 and make these bold claims that it's faster than, this generation's top tier card, I gotta kind of question it. Now, that demo was all DLSS supported games to my knowledge. What happens when you start throwing mid-tier developed games, when you start throwing early access at it and comparing those benchmarks in a real world scenario, DLSS and RT off, where does that leave this card, or these cards, I should say, stacked up against the 2080 Ti?
Well, I'm hoping that, going forward with all this, that I'm on the fence, and I'll tell you why. Half of me is super excited, hoping that every claim that Nvidia has made is true. Okay,
absolutely.
And that's from a technology standpoint. From a consumer standpoint, I'm a little frustrated because if it is all true, and it's not just smoke and mirrors, and it is, the 3070 is 1.9 times faster than my 2080 Ti, then I have a $2,000+ card that has now just been valued at $500 because you can pick up a card that outperforms mine by two, just rounding up there, obviously.
Yeah.
You're gonna say something that it's gonna outperform me times 2 for $600. I mean, for me as an enthusiast builder, and for any of you guys that are enthusiast builders, I mean, that's going to frustrate anybody. Because, I mean, not only have you just stomped all over all the guys that went out and had, a lot of the time when I deal with customers in my store, they come in, and it's not a matter of people don't want the 2080 Ti, it's expensive.
It is.
It's an enthusiast card. So to get the people to spend that kind of money, I never have to talk anybody into it, but there are the guys that come in, they teeter-totter, like, should I really spend that kind of money? Should I, what's it going to be like? And for me, in past experience, if you don't mind, I can talk about like the 1080 Ti. So I obviously went from the 980 Ti to the 1080 Ti to the 2080 Ti. So when I had the 1080 Ti, I didn't buy the first revision of the RTX 20 series.
And you wouldn't have had to, because it was just an absolute power hungry card. It chewed up everything.
Yeah, and even still to today's standards, the only card out there that actually outruns that 1080 Ti, pound for pound, is the 2080 Super, and then by 4%. And then the 2080 Ti came out and just smashed the 1080 Ti.
Of course.
So if you have a 1080 Ti right now, this is pre-30 series or 3 series, whatever you want to call it. There's no point on upgrading from a 1080 Ti to a 20S Super unless you want ray tracing. So
absolutely.
And it's always been choppy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, I did a couple tests, and I know we shared some of this the other night, that, ray tracing's come a long way from where it was, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, being introduced with things like Battlefield 5 as an example, even Shadows of the Tomb Raider. One of the games I actually tested the other night, and I found that, there still hasn't been a lot of improvement on it. It's solid, but it's just not up to where we expected it to be. But Going back on topic, I ended up messing with the Wolfenstein Youngblood, and the numbers were through the roof. I mean, easily every option to max that game out, ray tracing on DLSS, you're crunching almost 200 frames per second, if not over 200 frames per second, with everything on quality as opposed to the performance settings. Now, you go to performance as an example, you end up skyrocketing those numbers, and they go up even further. Now, use DLSS with ray tracing off, and it's a whole different animal. I think I clocked in just close to 300 frames per second there during that benchmark, if I recall.
I believe you did.
Actually, can we confirm that? Let's confirm that together real quick. There we go.
222 frames per second, your average.
Average. Minimum 102 because there is a weird stutter when it starts their benchmark, and then maxing out at 335. Like, that's crazy. To say that these cards are end of life, you're crazy. I'm sorry. I'm calling it.
Yeah, I mean, my problem is that if somebody says that the 2080 Ti is end of life right now, I don't disagree. I don't agree, but I don't disagree only if the 3070 is on par with what Nvidia claims. Now, that also ties into what they did with the 1080 Ti versus the 2080 Ti. So when Nvidia originally launched the 2080 Ti, they had like beautiful Battlefield 1, I believe it was. They had all kinds of like crazy DLS stuff. Battlefield 1. They had Battlefront. I don't know if it was 1 or 2. I can't remember.
I believe it was for... What was for 2? Yeah, it was 2.
Yeah, because it had Phasma in it. So anyway, they were showing off all this crazy stuff, and all of us were just like, wow, this is going to be amazing. Now, me personally, if I have to be completely candid, I really don't care about DLSS myself, only because yes, I am a graphics person. I want my game to look amazing. I'm also a frames person, so I want the highest frames imaginable. And the frames that we're talking about here in this video, you also have to understand that we have probably one of the most powerful systems you can buy in today's market. So, I mean, him and I have very similar systems. And
wrong?
no, like even my mini build that we had talked about last week or the week before, I mean, that was pretty much your exact specs.
Yeah.
Just crammed into a little tiny, shoebox.
Yeah, you had an Xbox, and I've got a wall-mounted home theater debacle.
Yeah, a little monster. Man. So, and that's the thing. Like the only real difference between our builds is I have a 10900K now. That's really it. So we can both speak from experience that the 2080 Ti is a monster, but it's nowhere near what Nvidia originally claimed it would be.
Absolutely.
So when they start talking about DLSS, ray tracing, RTX, I remember trying to play Battlefield 1, jumped on through my frames on, and I was just, first off, right out of the gate, it wasn't supported, and I was like, what?
Yeah. Mines were blown a little bit.
Yeah, I was like, how? At that time, too, like, prices were, like, inflated because it was, like, the newest card on the market. So, I mean, I think my first 2080 Ti that I owned was a Strix. And, I mean, I paid Asus. You always pay a little premium, so I think I paid like $2,400 after tax for that.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and
in Canadian dollars, by the way.
Yeah. Well, we are Canadian. Look at me. I like bacon. So, so yeah. Like with that being said, I threw it on. Ray tracing didn't work. So that was a little discouraging. And then when they did finally bring it out, I mean, it was like I had a potato for a computer. It was just choppy, unplayable. I mean, I remember at one point I pulled my gun out. It disappeared. Came back and I was holding like not even a gun. It was just like this pixeled rendering
polygon.
Yeah, it was render,
like I was like,
totally. What is this? So, and then the frames that they were claiming that because I don't know if they were smart this time. They did not say we get this many frames in our games this time because for the 20 series launch, they're like, they really we can guarantee you get like 500 frames in this. I'm just paraphrasing. They didn't actually say 500, but you get this many hundreds of frames and this many hundred, and it was like, oh, sweet, I'm gonna get this. You jump on, and for the average consumer that doesn't have, at the time it was the 8700. I believe it was most people had the i5s. Most people weren't really up in like the i7s and stuff like that. And let's be realistic, the i5, great consumer chip, it does its job. It was a workhorse, but it's still like. Nvidia comes out and says, "Hey man, like you're gonna get this many hundreds of frames," and they fail to say like these are the rest of the specs of the computer, and I think that drives me nuts as a person who has to try to explain this to people on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Because guys come in with like, say, a $1,500 budget, and they're like, "Well, Nvidia said that I'm going to get this many frames." It's like, well, yeah, but Nvidia's not telling you that they have a $6,000 machine that they're running this stuff on.
And that's the difference maker.
And it's this. Ryzen does the same, and I went to. I had to sit down, and this kind of all correlates with each other. But I had to sit down. It would have been 2 years ago. I sat down and with my company, and we went and did a Ryzen whole expo thing, and we went and sat watching a movie, and we got to ask questions and blah blah blah. And I called them out on some stuff, and I pretty much like, "That's a great question. Next." They completely ignored me, and right then and there, I was kind of like, "Really? You guys don't have an answer for me, right?" And that really kind of shook my faith with Ryzen. And I see all this new, all these guys that come in, like, Ryzen's, their marketing is phenomenal. They've got such a good way of being like, "You're a gamer? Ryzen's what you need." You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And
they've almost pulled me in a couple times. Not quite, but they're close.
I mean, the reps are phenomenal. Okay, I personally know a couple of them, and they've treated me extraordinarily well. They're really good dudes, and Ryzen's got a great team behind them. AMD in general. So I got pulled in to the Ryzen train at one point. I did have I've had the 3700X, 3800X, 3900X, and the 3950. I've had pretty much the entire line. I didn't do the XT stuff because that wasn't it when I was into Ryzen. Just to try it all out, right? And I mean, it performs, but you got Nvidia saying, okay, but we'll just use what was that game that was out? It wasn't Battlefield 1. It came out along Battlefield 1. Was it World War II? COD?
Would have been, yeah. They were both they both made the shift from modern to OG Wars. Great Wars.
Yeah, so it was either that or it was Black Ops 2. I can't remember, but one of those games had come out, and Ryzen was just out, and Nvidia had done like this whole campaign about the 20 series, and they were claiming like 200 frames. You know what I mean? So Ryzen at that time was in their first gen Ryzen, so it was like the 16, 17, 1800X, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And I remember we had a kid come in, and he'd gone out, he'd bought the 1700X, and he was the happiest kid in the world, and he bought a 2060, I believe it was. This is before the Supers had come out. And he was, expecting, because, again, Nvidia didn't really, tell you, like, okay, you have to buy this to get these frames. He came back in, he was genuinely upset. The kid had worked, saved all his birthdays, all his allowances, all his Christmases, and did paper routes and blah, 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 and we sell him this computer, and he's just like, well, I'm not getting what I see on this video, and it's just kind of like...
Right.
That sucks. You know what I mean?
It does, but I mean, at the end of the day, Nvidia's whole thing and their whole sales strategy is that you need to pay to play, and it seems like it's been more and more that way since the introduction of the 10 series. We've just seen a steady increase in price. Now, that's obviously all changed with the 30 series, and it looks like there's more bang for your buck. But again, I think there's a lack of transparency, but that's all going to come to fruition with a lot of the reviews that we see and a lot of the real-world benchmarking that'll take place over the next couple of weeks. Because I would imagine at this point, we should expect to see YouTubers start getting review copies real soon, and we'll see a hell of a lot more of them.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know there's some circulation going around that people will be talking about. I've heard some stuff, here and there, but my thing is and you touched on a great point, consumer grade. So if I'm not mistaken, there was a few really upset YouTubers when the 20 series came out because Nvidia had made all these asinine claims. YouTubers got these cards and they were phenomenal.
Right.
But they were cherry picked, and yeah, you watch guys like I believe if I can name drop, Linus had done a video on it where he got the actual consumer grade card and was like, this is nothing like they said it was going to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm excited for this. Like, I have to like say thank you to Nvidia, because if it was AMD, and I'll tell you why. If they didn't come into the ring swinging the way they have, and they're not holding any punches. Let's be realistic. If they hadn't done this big move that they're doing, like Big Navi, I mean, if they hadn't said Big Navi's going to be the next big dog on the block, Nvidia would have still just been like, here's a 10% upgrade. Here's a 10% upgrade. Give me money. Here's a 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now we're seeing like, oh damn, like these guys really mean business. We need to pick up our socks. And that's what brings me to the 3070. I think, okay, it sucks for me. I have a $2,500 card. Rounding up, obviously, but $2,500 card. Okay? A $600 card is going to come out and it's going to, just dump all over my card. If that is the case, again, 50-50 shot, am I upset that my card's now valued at $500? Yes. But am I happy that the technology has moved forward enough for me to say, hey, I'm going to get 300 frames in 2K now with a $600 card?
You're going to jump all over it. 100%.
Exactly.
That's going to give you even more hope going up to a 3090, having the aspirations of eventually going to 8K. Now, I mean, the likely of most of us actually buying an 8K monitor, even in this new generation coming, is highly unlikely. There are, a small group of 1%ers that will go ahead and pick them up. But for the rest of us, we can at least look forward to going from 1080p to 1440 or 1440 to 4K and being able to enjoy a really clean aesthetic and a phenomenal frame rate. So that's something to hope for. Now, again, going back to my previous points about DLSS, I really hope that I'm wrong, because if I am, then that just means that we're all getting a massive generational leap. Night and day over our RTX, the first gen of RTX. But if I'm wrong, then, I mean, what does that mean? Do we stay on the 20 series cards, or do we wait it out? Like, what is this going to mean for us as users?
I think either way the shoe lands, I'm going to stick with my card for the first year anyway. I did it with the 1080 Ti. I'll do it with the 2080 Ti. And the reason being is I am not, as much as I did with this, I'm not an adopter of early tech. So,
right.
They're dropping at this 3080 or 3090, sorry. And I mean, look at the stuff they've pulled in the past where, all these guys ran out early adoption, grabbed 2080s, and they're like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the 2080 Super came out, and it was like, it's like I can't tell you how many guys tried to come back to the store to return their 2080s because the Super got dropped without an announcement. Like, there was 3 days? And It was like, oh, by the way, guys, here you go. And it was like,
Now, if you had a 2060 and a 2070, you definitely had something to be really butthurt about. But I mean, if you had the 2080, it was a marginal increase. It didn't even matter at that point, really.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time for me, anyways, I was rotating to 2080, and I just kind of shrugged. I was like, I'm gonna get an extra 10 frames per second. That's not gonna make or break me. I'm not too worried.
And the 2080 Super didn't make sense to me at first. But then I think they had to do it. They had to bump it up that little extra because they did do the 2070 Super. And so 2070 Super pretty much was like, I don't know, 5 or 6% less than the 2080. So it made sense to do the 2080 Super, but
right.
It didn't in the same. There was enough of a performance increase between a 2080 and a 2080 Ti to make that Super kind of in between. So it kind of made sense, but you're right.
If they bumped it up any more, then you'd have the 2080 to 2080 Super to 2080 Ti comparisons, and that's gonna piss off your high end clientele.
That's right, but the thing is that that's the same thought process. So that the 3070 coming out is
You nailed it.
You know what I mean? Can we touch on Big Navi for a second? So I think. AMD's coming out, and I think this whole move, it comes down to AMD came out and people were looking like I've talked to a few people and I've watched a few streams and a few I've had a few heated discussions about it. I want people here now to know that I don't care what team. I'm not generalized a blue team, red team, or green team. Okay. Blue team. I mean, to a point, yeah, but. I'm not, I had red, you know what I mean? And I bleed red, man. When I first started in this stuff, I was AMD, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, AMD coming out, and I kind of feel bad because they're doing such great things over at AMD. And they've really brought the competition back to where it should be.
Absolutely.
So if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have what we're looking at today.
For CPUs, that is.
Or even video cards.
I'm gonna kind of disagree, and I think that they have a really good chance at not so much. I mean, they could actually take the lead, but realistically, they have a chance of reintroducing that competition. I just don't think it's been there as much as people want to believe that it is.
I mean, if you look at the numbers from we'll say the 6 series, and then the 7 series, and then the 9 series, and then the 10 series. It was incremental increases, kind of like what Intel used to do. You know what I mean? And then from the 10 series to the 20 series was big because it was RTX. It was a whole new shebang. Everybody was just like, whoa. Because so before it was just like horsepower. Well, now you have some torque to go with that horsepower. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So what I'm saying is Big Navi, now I don't know for sure. I just know from like little hearsay here and there, the little bit that I've read up on it.
Right.
Big Navi was supposed to land somewhere between the 2080 and the 2080 Ti, and it was supposed to come in at such a low price point that people are going to be like, well, shoot, I'm going to go with these guys. And I think what that did is that scared Nvidia. I think Nvidia was just like, oh, hold on a second. You guys actually have a card that can compete in our space? No. We have to crush that. Bang, here you go. And I'm hoping that is the case because, again, and that's where I was getting at, where we have to thank AMD. I feel bad because they're kind of being used as stepping stones to these bigger companies because AMD is a big company and they've taken over their shares and they've done a really, really great job. But I think Intel's been sitting back on something for a long time. I think Nvidia's been sitting back on the stuff for a long time. And
I hope that's the case with Intel. I mean, they've had a really rough go this year. 2020 hasn't just been bad to not only all of us, but Intel specifically with the setbacks that we've had. And I know Matt had talked about that a couple weeks back. And I mean, I love my boys in blue, but get your shit together, guys.
Yeah,
like, it's
really.
time. It's time.
Yeah, I mean, like even just their latest campaign with was it Gen 11 or Series 11, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was complete slander. You know, that's all it was. It was a trash campaign. It's something you'd see in politics, right?
Yeah.
It was pretty much like, hey, AMD. You know what I mean?
It really was.
And
it really was.
I hope AMD comes out and slaps them and just be like, here you go. Here's what we have next. And I really, truly do hope that happens. I have Intel, but if AMD was to pull up their socks, get their RAM stuff figured out, and get their single core performance up to where Intel is, I'd bleed red all day long.
I get that completely.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the cores.
There
it's
are
enticing.
a lot of cores. I mean, you add that to anything that runs off of really good multi-core and multi-threaded optimization. You're in the green at that point. There's no coming back. Now single core remains to be seen, obviously, and hopefully we'll see that. Ryzen 4000 is not too far away in the near distant future. So we'll see what happens. But in terms of Big Navi, I mean, let's be honest. The big thing to come from this is going to be price. You know what I mean? Price and performance, and will it drive Nvidia down even more? I don't think so. I think Nvidia's just kind of got their pricing where they know everybody's happy, and it's showing. I mean, the general word on the street has been really, really positive in terms of that price point, because we all expected this to just go skyrocket. Now, if you live in Canada, of course, it's a whole different story. You're paying, the customs and brokerage fees from all the retailers, and we're getting a little, a little bit of a higher price. But at the end of the day, you really can't complain. It really all boils down to DLSS 2.0 and where this is going with these cards. If those benchmarks come in and they're able to pull ridiculous raw numbers off of non-DLSS games, then we've got a home run. And at that point, I definitely welcome a 3092 my door ASAP. As close to launch as possible. Now, obviously, because of where we are, I might end up being that I wait a little bit longer into the late fall or winter. But as soon as I can get one, I will have one, and we'll make sure that it's talked about on future episodes of STV.
It'll be in my build.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure to jump on with you and shoot the shit. It's been a minute. Awesome to be back on Saday's TV one time for the finale. It was really cool, and I hope you guys are enjoying all the content that Matt's throwing at you guys. But that's everything I've got for you. So I'm going to hand it back to Matt, and we'll get going with more of the season finale.
All right, so there you have it. We have 3 brand new cards with high expectations, high ambitions, and actually low prices. Very, very respectable prices, at least for the US. Definitely not in Canada. So this season we've had some absolute banger moments, talking about new releases, speculating on Nvidia, and that's driven us right to this moment. And even talking about some amazing Saday's gear and Saday's deals and all of that stuff. Which brings me on to our next point. To celebrate an amazing season, we're going to close it off with a sale that you guys can actually access at midnight tonight, running September 5th and 6th on select Saydays headsets, giving you 30 to 35% off. All the links for Amazon are in the description down below, so click away and shop till you drop. A special thanks to our team abroad, our one-man film crew, and of course you guys at home watching every single episode that we do here. We'll catch you guys in 5 weeks when we start up season 3, and trust me, we have some pretty insane and incredible antics lined up for you guys, so that's some stuff that you are not going to want to miss. I'm Matt, and this has been Saydays TV, growing together with gamers all the way to our season finale. See you guys soon.